Welcome to Toy-Polloi. No Legos were harmed in the making of this video.
Hello and welcome to another video from Toy-Polloi. Now today we're going to go about making a custom He-Man figure. One of the figures that a lot of people have heard about that is almost impossible to get is a Wonderbread or Wun-dar He-Man, and I thought rummaging through my box of bits that I have enough here that I could make my own Wun-dar He-Man using pieces of broken He-Mans and broken Fistos, and we should get quite a nice result. So in front of me here you can see this is just some bits I pulled out of my sort of spares box, and we have the torso of Fisto. And the reason I want to use the torso of Fisto is because if you ever look at the Wun-dar or Wonderbread He-Man, his pelvis is actually made out of a brown plastic, whereas if you look at He-Man, you can see he has a sort of orangey red plastic. So to make it look as accurate as possible, we're going to use this torso, which is the Fisto one, just because it has brown plastic, and it means that the only bits that we have to paint are bits that were painted originally. And we're also going to use Fisto's legs just because I have a spare pair here. We could actually just use He-Man's legs because, again, these are all the same element. So let's get started on making this custom Wonderbread or Wun-dar He-Man. So here are the basic elements we're going to need. We have the body and legs of Fisto and the arms of He-Man. I've actually got two right arms just because they're slightly different colours with slightly different amounts of damage. I might see if I've got another one in my spares box. This arm, as you can see, has got some little bits of the mould sort of plastic degradation marks on it. It's also a slightly different colour. It'd be nice if we had a matching pair like these, but this one's missing a thumb, so I might have another rummage around, or just take an arm off another of my He-Man figures. But this is enough to get started with. So first thing we need to do is actually to reattach the legs. As you can see, these have broken off. Now I'm going to be using some of the new He-Bands. Now I've shown you these before, but these are now available in the UK and they are sold as He-Bands. I will put a link in the description for these, and you can get them off eBay. You can buy them in packs of 5 or 10. So I've got a pack of 10 here, and you can see this is what you get. This is a reproduction of the band that holds the legs together. Now I've already done a bit of prep work on this Fisto and removed the old band that was in the legs. If you haven't seen how to do that, then basically you just need a screwdriver and you sort of jab that in and pull the band out, and you'll end up with a hollow hole like that. And we have to insert these new bands. Now I'm going to show you a old band just so you can see what they look like. Now this old band is only bent because it's actually been in a figure for so long. So the modern reproductions are pretty much exactly the same. The little end cap is slightly smaller, and that does actually help in refitting them, but otherwise they are made of the same sort of tough rubber, and this is exactly what we need. So we're going to fit this first and reattach his legs. So let's get this in place and I'll show you how to do that, and we can then start sorting out the Wonderbread He-Man. The way I like to do these is to actually thread the band through the pelvis first before attaching them to the legs. I've seen some other people push the band in one leg first and then put the band through, but I've always found it easier putting the band through. So we've got a little piece of string here. I'm going to thread this through the main hole, which is just sort of the back part there of the pelvis. So if you just use a bit of string and some tweezers, you can very easily pull this through. So you've got a little loop now, and I'm going to loop that over the end of the He-band, and then we have to pull this through the hole. Now this again is a little bit of a fiddly job. Sometimes you need a screwdriver or something just to be able to sort of guide it through. On Fisto it's slightly easier than some other figures because there's a piece of plastic on some of the earlier figures that sort of pushes in the way, but on Fisto it's not there. So we can easily pull that through. So we can now see there is the band in place. And now we need to warm up the legs in some freshly boiled water to soften the plastic, and we can push these new bands in the top of the leg. So let's get the kettle on. So I've just got some freshly boiled water there, and we're going to soften the plastic by just dunking these legs into the boiled water and leaving them for about sort of 30 to 40 seconds, just enough that they start to soften up, and we can get everything else prepared. So I have some locking forceps here. Now these are ideal for sort of pushing the rubber bands into place, because you need something that's got good grip and is sort of nice and easy and strong that you can push with. So I'm going to first of all clip one of these bands on, and we want to sort of line them up because obviously you want the legs facing forward. So I just want to sort of get an idea of which way these are going to face. So I'm going to grab one of these from the back so that I know that I'm sort of pushing this into the front part of the leg, and we should start to be able to see these legs softening. So I'm going to get the right leg. This is the left leg, so I need to dig out the other leg. obviously remember that this water is very hot. That's why I've got a cloth here that I can... so this leg has now gone quite soft, and I've got another pair of pliers. I'm just going to use these to sort of pull open the hole in the top leg. You can see the rubber has gone very soft now, and I should be able to just push these in. You can see how easy that was. That's gone straight in and in place. So we can now prepare the other leg. Again, you just sort of have to pull these about. I'm going to line this up. So I'm sort of, again, at the back of the leg, lock those on. I'll get this other leg out. And again, by now this should have gone soft. So this leg is now, again, gone quite soft. And again, I can just put the pliers in here just to open out the top of the leg hole. And again, we can just push that in place and unlock those. And there we have the two legs reattached. So using these he-bands is pretty easy work, and as I say, these are available on eBay, so go and grab them if you want to fix any of your sort of loose-legged figures. We can now get on with starting to paint this one. Now we've got the legs reattached, we can go ahead and start painting. Now the Wonderbread He-Man has a black belt and black boots, and as I said, the pelvis is made out of brown plastic, which is why I do like the Fisto pelvis, because it is already made of plastic, and that saves one area that you don't really want to paint because you've got the legs rubbing against it, so it's better if you use this sort of pelvis. Now the paint, as you can see on these He-Man figures, is a little bit gloss, but it's also not fully gloss, so I'm not going to use a gloss paint. I'm going to mix the two. I have here a couple of Humbrol acrylics. I've got 21 and 33. 21 is a gloss black and 33 is a matte black. And if I mix the two together, I should get a similar sort of finish to this sort of luster finish that they've got there. And we need to very carefully paint the belt area and the boots. So I'm going to just mix up these two colours so that we got a matte mix with the gloss, and this will give us a nice sort of finish. And now I can just start painting everything, and this just goes slowly. Make sure you're sort of careful and don't paint over any areas you don't want to, and then we'll let it dry for a couple of hours and we can start working on the next area. But as you can see, it paints quite nicely, and because we're painting onto a sort of dark colour, you can actually be quite sort of brutal with how you paint it, not have to worry too much. You might want to do 2 coats of this, it all depends on how well it coats, but I think this should be okay. I've now got his legs and the belt painted black. I'm just going to leave that for now, so let the paint fully dry. I actually had to stop filming halfway through because I've got quite bright lights here. The paint that I was using dried out very quickly, so I've mixed the same mixture again and just sort of finished off. If you don't have the bright lights, these things take a little while to dry down, and it's much easier to paint with, but under these very bright lights everything does dry particularly quickly. But you can see that the finished result is looking quite nice. He's now got the black boots and black belts that the Wonderbread He-Man should have. So we'll let that dry, then we can start sort of putting him together, and we'll also paint his head, but I want to paint the head in place because it'll be much easier once it's all on the body. So let's let that dry. Now that the paint has had time to dry, you can see the finish we've ended up with is a nice sort of, not quite gloss, not quite matte, and sort of matches the original tone of the He-Man paint. So now we can move on to his head. Now I've just reattached his head just quickly, because it's much easier to paint these things if you've got something else to hold on to. And so I can hold on to the chest section and paint the head. And we're going to paint the head. It needs to be a similar sort of brown to the pelvis. So I would class that as a sort of milk chocolatey brown. And I'm going to be using some Humbrol paint. Again, I've got number 186, which is a matte brown, which is a very close match, and I've just added a very tiny amount of black gloss into that just to tone it down ever so slightly, and also that will help give it a little bit of this sort of shiny finish to it. And now we can just carefully paint his hair. So we're going to paint the whole of his hair this chocolate brown colour. Might need to do a couple of coats on this one, but it shouldn't take too long to do. And we should end up with a nice result which will look like the Wonderbread He-Man sort of colour of hair. So again, I can just carefully paint this, and I think this will need 2 coats. You can see the yellow is actually coming through quite strongly, so I'll do 2 coats on that, and it will start to look how I want it to. While I'm waiting for the paint on the head to fully dry, you can see I did the second coat on that, and that's actually covered really nicely. I've actually just dropped a little bit of super glue onto Fisto's arm here, because this should have a spring-loaded arm. The spring-loaded mechanism was actually broken on this figure anyway, so this little peg rotated freely, which meant no matter what hand you put on it, it would always sort of roll around and would never sort of hold in any position. So a little bit of super glue on that has held that quite firmly, and I can drop the arms back on, so you can see now, that one is basically like an original He-Man hand. It just rotates on the spot, which is what I wanted. I can drop the other arm on as well. That's a bit tighter, that one. There we go. So he's now actually looking a lot more like He-Man. I have not been able to find a spare arm with a thumb, so for the moment I'm going to leave this one with a bit of a chewed thumb, but he still looks alright. In the future maybe I can come across another spare that I can swap that out of, but for the moment he's starting to look good. So now all we need to do is put the sort of finishing touches on him. So in the meantime I'm going to let him dry, and we'll come back to this in an hour or so. We can start putting him together finally. To make this Wonderbread He-Man look complete, we obviously need to add his armour, and that is the armour from the weapons pack, which is basically Zodak's armour in black. So I have that here, and we can just slot that over He-Man's body and put it in place. And that sort of completes the look of this Wonderbread He-Man. It's amazing what you can do just with a little bit of paint on a figure, but that's all they did in this case, was a little bit of paint and pick some weapons from another character, and they gave it as a mail-away figure. So it's a very simple job to do, and a very easy custom to do. And here he is in all his glory. As you can see, it does look pretty nice. The paint has worked well. I'm very pleased with the sort of finished tone and shine of the paint on this. It's looking about the same as the original paint would have, which is what I wanted. Now obviously you're going to want a way to display your Wonderbread He-Man, and the guys who make the He-Bands, which is what I use to reattach legs, also make things called He-Stands, and they very kindly sent me some custom ones here. Now I'll put a link in the description to where you can get these. These come off eBay, and these are designed to hold He-Man figures. They come in various sizes. I've got a black one here, and these have been customized specifically for me, and say Toy-Polloi on them. These ones are for the larger figures, then there are these smaller ones for the female figures, and a whole selection of other ones in different colours. So if you want any custom stands for your He-Man figures, then check out the link in the description. Now these are held in place using little elastic bands, so they don't sort of damage the figure in any way. You can see there's elastic bands around the sort of foot holes there, and we just hook those over the feet. So let's put one of these on this custom figure. So you can see I can just hook the elastic band over, and it then holds him in place. Do the same on the other side, and this is ideal. Even though I've replaced the leg bands on these figures, they do tend to fall over if you've got them in display, and I quite often knock over the figures that I have in my collection, just because only a couple of them have stands. So these stands work really nicely, and this is quite nice because I've got a custom Toy-Polloi stand with my custom Wonderbread Wun-dar He-Man figure there. So it looks really nice. I'm very pleased with how that has come out. And here's my lineup of the 3 sort of He-Man figures. This is the era of He-Man that I like the best, the original one and the battle armor one, so it's now nice to have a Wonderbread version as well in my collection. As you can see, I've now got the stands on all of these. So if you want to do this yourself, you can easily do it. It's best to use a Fisto body, because you then don't have to paint the plastic of his pelvis, but it's straightforward to do. And if you need to reattach the legs of any of your figures, then use the He-Bands. Again, links to all the bits that I've used in this video will be in the description. So I've used the He-Bands and He-Stands. I've also got to say a big thank you to Anthony Williams, Alistair Taylor and Rob Dix, who have all helped me with this project. So hope this video has been of interest, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching Toy-Polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow Toy-Polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.